Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we are debating last week and this week the authorization of the use of military force authority that was granted in 2002, which is a really important debate that we're seeing here right on the Senate floor. By the way, it's a good faith argument. There's members on both sides of the aisle making different arguments. There's not a topic, in my view, more important than the issues at stake here. How to use military force, when to use military force. Is it authorized by the president to use military force? Because the issue of the U.S. government sending young men and women into harm's way to defend our country's interests, there's nothing more important, in my view. Nothing more important. So, I appreciate the time and the debate here on the floor. And it's also important because it wraps into, when you talk about young men and women going into harm's way overseas, one of the biggest harms to American servicemen and women over the past 20 years has actually been from Shia militia groups supported by Iranian terrorist organizations. Now, that doesn't always seem to make sense. Americans who were killed in Iraq and wounded in Iraq were often, and I'll give some of the numbers here, killed and wounded because those who did the killing and wounding were supplied by Iranian terrorist groups. In particular, the Quds Force, which was led by Qasem Soleimani, during the course of the Iraq War, killed over 600 American service members and wounded over 2,000 with very sophisticated IEDs that were supplied by the Iranians to their proxies in Iraq. So, what does any of this have to do with the 2002 AUMF for Iraq that we've been debating last week and will debate this week? Well, Madam President, the answer is everything. Everything. So we eventually figured out, we, the United States, that these very sophisticated IEDs are called explosively formed projectiles or penetrators, EFPs, were actually, as I mentioned, caused by the Iranians. Took some time to figure this out because, like so many things, the Iranian terrorists in Tehran, the Ayatollahs, they lie. They lie, and they denied it. Oh, we don't have anything to do with that. Well, they actually had everything to do with that. So again, the best and brightest in America, in my view, for many years during the Iraq War, were being killed by Iranian terrorists and being led by Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the Quds Force that was doing this. Madam President, during that time, 2005 through the middle of 2006, I was serving as a Marine Corps staff officer to the commanding general of U.S. Central Command, General Abizaid, deployed to many parts of the CENTCOM AOR with the CENTCOM commander, and probably the biggest concern, no doubt, was these incredibly effective, brutally efficient EFPs that were killing and wounding so many of our best and brightest. To this day, it's just remarkable to me that so few people even know about this or talk about it. killing and maiming thousands of American troops by the Iranians and the Quds Force, led by General Soleimani. So again, what does this have to do with the 2002 AUMF? Everything. What happened during that time? Well, when we figured out it was the Iranians doing this, we again, national leadership, never really retaliated against Iran at all. Imagine that. We know that they're killing and wounding thousands of our best and brightest, and the United States did not do anything to establish deterrence. As a matter of fact, during that time, we lost deterrence. And it became clear that Iran, with good reason, started to think, hey, we can kill American service members with impunity. There's no price. So they did. So when you lose deterrence with a terrorist regime that likes to kill Americans and has a history of killing Americans, it's not a good thing, especially for the young men and women who are serving our country in dangerous places. I remember early on in my Senate tenure here, Madam President, in a briefing we had in the SCIF, I asked the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, do you think we've lost deterrence? 600 Americans killed, over 2,000 wounded? You think the Iranians believe that they can kill as many American service members, again, our best and brightest, and not pay a price? The chairman said yes. The chairman said yes. I remember that very distinctly. So the whole point is, well, how do you reestablish deterrence? Because if you reestablish deterrence, you're going to save lives, you're going to protect your service members. And again, there's nothing more important than we do as a country than making sure the men and women who go defend our country, defend us, defend our interests, are protected, are lethal, are the best trained. But it's difficult. When you lose deterrence, it's hard to get it back. Well, Madam President, we did get it back. And I certainly applaud President Trump and the Trump administration when Qasem Soleimani was back in Iraq, scoping American forces to kill. By the way, a lot of them during that time were from Alaska. In early January 2020, the Trump administration said, the joke's over. This guy with blood on his hands, thousands of our best and brightest, he's not doing it again. And he was killed during a daring strike on January 3rd, 2020. He was looking to kill more American troops in Iraq, and he got killed. And I think it was justified, important signal to send to everybody around the world. You can't go around killing American troops and not expect to get a retaliation against you or your country. That should be basic. That should be basic. Every U.S. senator here today should agree with that 110%. So, the Trump administration said, we're not going to allow this anymore, and the guy who is responsible for killing so many Americans and wounding so many Americans, he's going to pay. And he did, with his life. The legal authorization for that very justified killing was the 2002 AUMF that we're debating right now. Okay. That was only 3 years ago that happened. So, it's very relevant to the issue of deterrence, very relevant to the issue of Iran. And for some of my colleagues saying, well, it's old, it has nothing to do with anything happening right now, they couldn't be more inaccurate. So this matters, and it matters today. And those who say it doesn't, they don't know this history, or they don't want to know this history, or they haven't been watching the news for the last 96 hours. Because, Madam President, as we've seen in the last 96 hours, some of us who were concerned about the very debate we're having here, which is to say, let's remove the authorization that we used to kill Soleimani, let's get rid of it. What kind of signal does that send? Could this signal maybe we're not worried about deterring Iran anymore? Could this signal that removing this authorization, this 2002 authorization, again, it was used to regain deterrence with Iran, if we got rid of it, would this embolden Iran? Well, as I mentioned, the last 96 hours, we've had Iranian proxies unleashing deadly attacks on American service members and American contractors. That's happening right now. Is it a coincidence? I don't know. 1 American dead, 5 wounded with these brazen attacks. Some of us thought this actually might happen. It's happening. It's happening. And unfortunately, Madam President, there was a little bit of something going on last week that we're going to get to the bottom of it, trust me. On the Armed Services Committee, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Because last Thursday, we were debating the AUMF. These vicious attacks started at 6:30 a.m. D.C. time on the day we were debating the AUMF all day Thursday. We didn't hear about it till close of business Thursday. Was somebody hiding that information from us? Pretty relevant information. Well, we're going to find out about that. So, Madam President, I'm going to be offering an amendment to the AUMF tomorrow. And I believe every U.S. senator should vote for it. And here's why. I believe that the 2002 AUMF clearly helped with deterrence. It was the authority, in addition to Article 2, to take out one of the biggest terrorists, heck, in the 21st century, that's for sure, who killed more Americans than any other terrorist, that's for sure. So the question is, will removing this AUMF lessen American deterrence against Iran's malign activities? And that's what my amendment asked the Director of National Intelligence to do, to look at that question and certify the answer. And if the answer is no, then this new AUMF, or the removal of this AUMF, can go forward. Again, it's a really simple question. Ask the DNI for the next 30 days to look at this question. Will removing the 2002 AUMF lessen American deterrence against Iran's malign activities? Why would not every U.S. senator want to go, that's a really good question. Heck, we're seeing it in the Middle East right now, in Syria. Maybe this is going to embolden Iran. Heck, maybe we shouldn't do it. Maybe by doing this, we're going to put American service members' lives at risk. Maybe we shouldn't do it. Let's ask the DNI. That's it. Why wouldn't you want that? For the proponents, I was just talking to a couple of proponents of this AUMF debate, and again, I have a lot of respect for them, but I asked them, why wouldn't you want this? Wouldn't you want to know? Just wait 30 more days. I know you've been trying to get this removed for years. 30 days. Send it to the President's own Director of National Intelligence and ask her, review the intelligence, review what you're hearing with the chatter among the Iranian proxies trying to kill Americans, who've killed Americans. Is any of this related to the removal of the AUMF? And then give us an answer in 30 days. And if the answer is no, this can move forward. If it's yes, this will hurt our deterrence against Iran, then we shouldn't be doing this. That's all my amendment is asking. It simply says, the authorization for the use of military force, AUMF of 2002, if it's voted on to be repealed, which it looks like it will be, will go into effect after the Director of National Intelligence certifies in an intelligence assessment to Congress that the repeal will not degrade the effectiveness of United States-led deterrence against Iranian aggression. Who could be against that? We should have 100 U.S. senators wanting to know the answer to that question, especially given what just happened over the last 96 hours. Because maybe this debate is emboldening the Iranian proxies and terrorists. Maybe it's not. So, Madam President, let's get the answer. My amendment would also make sure that is 100% clear that if the 2002 AUMF is repealed, that the United States can fully retaliate against the Iranians or any Iranian threat if they are threatening our country or our people. Now, I know that most of my colleagues here agree with that. We negotiated that language with some of my Democratic friends and Republican friends. So it's just that and this issue of asking the DNI to certify that what we're doing on the Senate floor right now is not going to undermine our deterrence against Iran. And oh, by the way, put more American lives at risk. Simple. I would be shocked if any senator voted against wanting to know the answer to that basic question. So, Madam President, I'm asking my colleagues to just think hard. Don't you want more information? Can't you wait 30 more days to get President Biden's DNI to certify that what we're doing right here in the Senate is not going to undermine deterrence and put more American lives at risk? I hope that all of my colleagues would agree with that and vote on my amendment. And finally, Madam President, I will just say the deterrence that we regained with the justified killing of Soleimani has clearly been slipping away, particularly once the Biden administration came into office. And it is a concern. I was on a recent bipartisan CODEL to the Middle East, and the number one issue we're hearing about in every single stop by every single leader was the malign activities of Iran. You name the country we were in, and we were in a lot of them, all the Abraham Accord countries, in Israel, Iran was the number one topic, and how aggressive they're getting. The lifting of the terrorist designation for the Iranian-backed Houthis, almost in the first month of this administration, in February 2021, was a sign of weakening deterrence against Iran. The administration's inability to stand firmly with the United Arab Emirates, one of our strongest allies in the Middle East, when it was attacked by Houthi missiles and drones, of course, with the Iranians' help, was something else that lessened our deterrence. And Madam President, just last week when the CENTCOM commander testified, he said there have been 78 similar attacks on American forces since 2021. We're losing deterrence. That's during the Biden administration's 2 years. They've been attacking the hell out of our troops. What are we doing? What are we doing? The mullahs in Tehran, like all tyrants, are emboldened by accommodation. So I am asking my Senate colleagues to take the very prudent, logical, and responsible step to ask the DNI if what we are getting ready to do here on the Senate floor, which is to remove the 2002 AUMF, will that undermine our deterrence against Iran? Let's wait 30 days to get the answer. Don't put your head in the sand, my colleagues. Stand up, see what the answer is from the DNI, so we can move forward in a way that makes sense for our national security, deterrence of the world's largest state-sponsored terrorism, and most importantly, the ability to protect and defend our service members serving overseas in places like Syria is very dangerous. I yield the floor.